Have you ever found yourself reacting intensely to something seemingly small, only to later wonder why it affected you so much? This is what it feels like to be triggered. In this video, we'll dive deep into understanding what it means to be triggered and, more importantly, how you can break free from this cycle forever. Whether it's fear, anger, or frustration, these emotional outbursts often leave us feeling drained and out of control. But they don't have to define your life. If you've ever struggled with overwhelming emotions, or felt like you're constantly reliving old wounds in new situations, this video is for you. We'll explore the real reasons behind these reactions, help you identify your triggers, and give you practical strategies to regain emotional balance. Imagine being able to stay calm and composed, no matter what life throws your way. Ready to take that step? Let's get started. Being triggered refers to an intense emotional reaction, such as fear, anger, or sadness, often caused by a current situation that stirs up unresolved emotions from the past. For most people, what might seem like a harmless or trivial event can evoke powerful feelings in someone who is triggered. This is because the situation reactivates a deeply buried memory or unresolved trauma, making it difficult for the person to separate the present moment from their emotional past. Triggers can be subtle and deeply personal, often linked to specific words, behaviors, or environments. The brain, conditioned by past experiences, interprets these cues as dangerous, leading to a heightened emotional response. In these moments, the person might feel overwhelmed, as though they're reliving a past trauma. This reaction is often involuntary, creating a sense of helplessness as they are flooded with emotions. Understanding triggering is key to gaining control over these emotional reactions. It's not just about avoiding things that set you off, but learning why these triggers exist in the first place. By identifying and naming your triggers, you take the first step toward managing them rather than being controlled by them. Triggers aren't necessarily signs of weakness, but are often survival mechanisms the brain developed as a way to protect you from past harm. Recognizing them is crucial for emotional growth and healing. When someone is triggered, the emotional shift is often dramatic and immediate. A person may go from feeling calm and collected to suddenly overwhelmed by panic, fear, or rage. These emotional surges feel uncontrollable, leaving the individual exhausted and emotionally drained. What makes this process even more challenging is that the person may not fully understand why they're reacting this way. The emotional impact can be devastating, not only for the person experiencing it but also for those around them. It can lead to strained relationships, as loved ones struggle to understand these sudden outbursts. This often creates a cycle where the triggered individual feels misunderstood and isolated, intensifying their emotional reaction in future similar situations. Moreover, these intense emotional shifts can have long-term effects on mental health. Constantly being triggered can increase stress, anxiety, and even depression. Over time, it becomes harder for the individual to return to a state of calm after an emotional outburst, which affects their overall well-being and quality of life. Learning to recognize the emotional impact of triggers is essential for healing. By understanding how these reactions affect both you and those around you, you can begin to implement strategies to manage and reduce their frequency and intensity. Triggers are often deeply connected to unresolved emotional pain from the past. When the brain encounters a situation that resembles a past traumatic event, it automatically activates a defensive response. Even though the current moment may not be dangerous, your brain perceives it as a threat, drawing on the emotional memories of what happened before. This is why your reaction may seem out of proportion to others. For many, this connection to the past is unconscious. They may not even be aware that their intense emotional response is tied to an old memory. However, the emotional and psychological pain stored from past experiences comes flooding back in the present moment. This can happen even in situations that seem completely unrelated to the original trauma. Understanding how past experiences shape current reactions is vital for breaking the cycle of triggering. It's important to identify where these emotions come from and to recognize that your brain is trying to protect you. The key is learning how to respond to the present, rather than being trapped in the emotions of the past. Recognizing the influence of past trauma on current triggers can be empowering. It allows you to start separating past pain from present circumstances, which is essential for emotional healing and growth. One of the major challenges of being triggered is the inability to distinguish between what happened in the past and what's happening now. When triggered, the brain blends past memories with present experiences, leading to confusion. It feels as though the same pain, danger, or fear from the past is happening all over again, even when the current situation is vastly different. This blurring of past and present can lead to heightened anxiety, as the person feels like they are reliving the trauma. The body reacts as though it's in a fight or flight mode, even if there is no real threat. This makes it incredibly difficult for the individual to stay calm and grounded in the present. This confusion can also damage relationships and self-perception. Others may not understand why the person is reacting so intensely, causing misunderstandings and conflict. The individual themselves may feel guilty or confused about their reactions, further deepening the emotional turmoil. Overcoming this requires practice in mindfulness and emotional awareness. Learning to differentiate between past emotions and present reality is crucial for gaining control over your reactions and preventing emotional overwhelm. Interestingly, even though being triggered is an unpleasant experience, many individuals are drawn back into environments or relationships that evoke these emotional responses. This compulsion can be explained by the brain's familiarity with the emotional states tied to past trauma. For some, revisiting these triggers feels strangely familiar, even comforting in its predictability, despite the emotional pain it brings. This pattern can lead to self-sabotage. People may subconsciously seek out situations that mirror past trauma because it feels like a way to resolve those old wounds. However, instead of healing, these experiences often reinforce the emotional patterns, making it even harder to break free. Recognizing this compulsion is a critical step in breaking the cycle. Understanding why you might be drawn to certain situations or people helps you make conscious choices about where to invest your emotional energy. It's about learning to step away from what feels familiar, even if it feels safe in its predictability. By becoming aware of this subconscious pattern, you can take control of your emotional life, avoiding situations that continually trigger you and focusing on environments that support your healing and growth. Healing from emotional triggers is possible, but it requires patience, self-awareness, and compassion. The first step is learning to recognize when you're being triggered and acknowledging the emotions that arise. Rather than suppressing these feelings, it's important to investigate them. What is your body trying to tell you? What unresolved pain is being brought to the surface? Over time, you can learn to control the initial emotional reaction, allowing you to respond to situations more calmly and rationally. One effective method is grounding techniques, which help you stay present and differentiate between past memories and present experiences. Mindfulness and breathing exercises can help interrupt the emotional flood before it takes over. Another key aspect of healing is making peace with the past. This might involve therapy or self-reflection to understand the root of your triggers and work through the trauma. Emotional maturity grows when you understand not only what triggers you, but why, and develop strategies to manage these triggers without being overwhelmed by them. The journey to overcoming triggers is a gradual one, but as you grow more aware of your emotional patterns, you'll find that you can move through life with greater calm, confidence, and emotional balance.